player in the state of California, a high school player in the state of California, according to ESPN.com, going back a year ago. He redshirted last year for Larry Kristoviak, obviously another Montana tie at the University of Utah, and now is going to transfer to the University of Montana. Presumably will have to sit out a year, and so he's already redshirted, so this is a full year of eligibility that is lost, but he is still just a freshman heading into this season, and so would, even with losing a year on the transfer, have 3 years of eligibility. When the original transfer from BYU could not come and I think was not able to get admission into the University of Montana, and this is, I don't know if this is a backup plan necessarily, because this is not a graduate transfer, so this is not for this season, it seems like. But obviously, when you look at the numbers associated with this kid, a very good player on the surface of it, a long guard, 6 feet 3 inches tall, but a perimeter guy, and this is another a good get, another quality player for Travis DeCuire and his staff.
It's just so amazing the culture of college basketball right now, and it's also so amazing how sometimes something that might seem detrimental to your program can actually work out to be better long term, both long term and short term. Jahshire Hartnett, the graduate transfer from BYU, he was a good player. That also, there's always multiple sides to every story, but when you basically get kicked off for your team for being insubordinate, or you fall out of favor and you decide to transfer because it's been made very clear that your insubordination is going to not cater to any more playing time for you, a lot of times guys take advantage of their second chances, whatever. What I'm saying is it's always a red flag. You never know with a guy like that. He's also a graduate transfer who was a veteran type guard, but not anything spectacular. He was going to be solid, and he's going to help Montana shore up its backcourt. I think that's what Travis DeCuire wanted, given the fact that they lost, the steadiest guy in the league in Ahmad Rory. But I'm watching Naseem Gaskin's highlight film right now. There's no question that Naseem Gaskin is significantly more talented than Jahshire Hartnett. Is he going to be better next year? Obviously not. He's not going to play next year. He's a young guy that's going to be a developmental project. Watching him shoot, he needs a little work on his shooting, but he is an unbelievably explosive athlete. I mean, this highlight tape is ridiculous. He's straight just dunking on people over and over and over again. Keith DeMolder, who's a new guy over at SWX, he worked for a California preps site, just doing some scouting stuff. And it's kind of like a Rivals.com or a Scout.com, but just Southern California specific. And he said he posted on Twitter, wow, great get for Montana. I've seen this guy play live, and he's an awesome, awesome player. So I think that obviously this guy's not going to help out Montana this year, but he's a better player than Jahshire Hartnett. I think he has a lot more upside, and he's going to have 3 years of eligibility remaining too. So if you get a guy like Hartnett, it's a stopgap. It shores up what you need now, but it has nothing to do with what you need for later.
Sure.
And so I don't know. I think that I didn't think when Hartnett couldn't get into graduate school here that it was as big of a loss. I think that one of the things that the Montana men's basketball season is going to hinge on next year is the freedom that's allowed Timmy Falls, especially if he is the guy that rises up to be the main facilitator. You and I have talked about this a lot, not on the show. I think that Timmy Falls is a guy that sometimes you have to take the bad with the good, because if you just let Timmy Falls run the show, he's going to be erratic sometimes. He's going to turn the ball over every once in a while. He's also going to make some passes that literally no one else in the Big Sky can make. And his creativity, it needs momentum within the span of the game to. I mean, Timmy Falls. Ahmad Rory is the master of 5 assists and no turnovers, 4 assists and no turnovers. I mean, I think he had a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio last year. That's ridiculous for how solid he was. But I don't think Ahmad Rory had any more than 7 assists in a game ever in his time at Montana. Timmy Falls could get you 10 assists in a game, no question, especially with the weapons that they have if they let him run. That's just also going to come with probably a worse assist-to-turnover ratio. You're going to get, 3-to-1 or maybe a 2-to-1. And Timmy Falls is going to turn the ball over 3-4 times if he gets you the 10 assists. But the excitement that he brings, the amount of momentum he's going to bring, and I mean, we've seen Timmy Falls too. He is an up-and-down guy because of his emotions, but when he's up, let's go. And if he's making those passes, then when he plays defense, he's the biggest pest in the entire league. So it's so interesting to me how they're going to manage that, because if he is the guy, I just think they have to let the reins off a little bit, but I just don't know if this coaching staff has that in them because they are so fundamental and structured.
Well, it is ironic where you go from, not just last year, one of the steadiest point guards both in emotion and in play ever that you're going to see in the Big Sky Conference in Ahmaad Rory. I mean, just even all the time, to one of the biggest roller coasters that you are going to see, both emotionally and in terms of his play. But when the wave is at its height, it's more than just an assist. It's more than just a bucket. It's game-changing momentum for your team.
And sometimes you need those showstopper type guys, especially when you have a great home court advantage like Montana does. I mean, again, Ahmaad Rory is awesome, but Ahmaad Rory was far down the list in terms of guys that ignited Dahlberg Arena over the last couple of years. I mean, Ahmaad Rory will hit that shot that squelches the other team's momentum. He's cold-blooded. He's going to navigate the game for you perfectly. But it's Michael Ogine that's catching the backside alley-oop and throwing it down. You know, it's a lot of other guys, including Timmy Falls. He is certainly a fan favorite at Dahlberg Arena.
No doubt.
And I just think that if you can let the reins off a little bit, it could be pretty darn good. But also this helps the Grizz now reload as well, because now when you look at some of the guys they have waiting in the wings, guys that are sitting out, they have a chance to be stacked in the future too, not just now. These are signings that are fortifying the program as a whole.
Building.
It's not necessarily win now. There's been so much speculation on what Travis DeCuire's next step is going to be. And if DeCuire wanted to just completely ride the model of just trying to get his team as good as he possibly can for the upcoming season so they can win an NCAA tournament game or two or whatever it takes for him to get that job that he wants to get or that we presume that he wants to get, okay, but to me, he's building this thing from both ends, and I think that that's going to leave Montana in a great place, even if he does leave.
Stutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We'll take a break. We'll come back. Garrett Middleton will join us in studio, talk about the Big Sky Celtic games. We also will get in about 15 to 20 minutes from now to the Root Sports schedule and what effect this might have on the teams playing on it, and particularly the University of Montana, who's in 6 games, and why. Everybody talk, this is the bitter, the bitterness from around the Big Sky Conference about how the University of Montana is on Root Sports so much more than everybody else, and they certainly are this year. But you know what? It's not just about the University of Montana in many of these games, and so we'll get into that and why that has fallen out this way. But also the varied kickoff times and the havoc that could wreak or not, depending on your perspective, on the teams that are playing in these games throughout the year. So we'll get into all of that stuff coming up as well. Right now, quickly though, give us a call, 329-1899. Pair of tickets to the Phillipsburg Music Festival on Saturday, August 17th, this Saturday from noon to 7. Lady Lou and the Bird Dogs, great folk music act. Ryan Chris and the Rough Cuts, Shakewell Home Cooking, all of them playing all day long. A giant silent auction with all kinds of stuff, from golf to alfalfa hay to a shed with a loft. I mean, you got everything at this thing. Going to be a fun day. Everybody knows how fun it is to go down to Phillipsburg, check out the Paradise Valley, beautiful down there, and I don't know, maybe mine some ore, go to the candy shop, do the thing, and then have a great day. It benefits the GSA and the Phillipsburg Rotary Charities. 329-1899. You want a pair of tickets right now. 329-1899. Go down to Phillipsburg. Have a great weekend. Quick break. Back. Big Sky. Celtic games next. Check. Bitterroot Celtic games. I had the Big Sky on the mind. Sorry.
Yeah,
Bitterroot Celtic games.
Bitterroot Celtic games.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
At the Montana Club, our goal is to create a menu of mouth-watering food with variety to satisfy any craving. From the garden fresh ingredients in our salads to our succulent, perfectly grilled Montana Club Angus steaks, we take pride in every detail that goes into preparing your food. Top off your meal with a premium cocktail, wine, or microbrew. Come as you are and satisfy your craving with our home-style breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula is like your paint doctor. They take the pain out of painting. Don't trust your home to anything less than professional PPG paints from Garden City Paint and Glass. Go to visualizecolors.com. Scan in your room photo to see what color combinations will look best before painting. That's visualizecolors.com. Featuring professional PPG paints. Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula. Across from the Southside McDonald's at 3217 Brooks.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
Last minute barbecue invitation? Stop at Town Pump on the way. Pick up White Claw, Truly, and Smirnoff Seltzers 12-pack cans for only $14.99. Save the other arm to pick up Gardettos and Chex Mix. Buy one, get one free. Be the barbecue hero with a little help from Town Pump.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up, oh yeah.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. Montana State will have its fifth different starting quarterback when the Bobcats take on Texas Tech to open Jeff Choate's fourth season at the helm later this month. On Monday, Choate announced that he and his staff have named redshirt freshman Casey Bauman at starter under center to begin the 2019 season. The 6'7", 235-pounder from northwestern Washington has a rocket arm and surprising mobility. He's only played 6 snaps in Division I action. Bauman beat out sophomore Tucker Rovig, a 6'5", 205-pounder from Boise, who started against South Dakota State and Wagner last season for the Bobcats. Bauman takes over an offense that averaged 37 points and 434 yards per game after Matt Miller took over as OC with 6 games left in the season. If you haven't seen Bauman, take a look at the Missoulian today and be impressed.
The Missoula Osprey lost in extra innings again on Monday, falling 4-3 to the Ogden Raptors in 11. The loss means the O's are no longer in first place in the Pioneer League North after suffering their third straight setback. The Raptors have now won 10 more games than anybody in the league and are 5-0 against the O's.
Root Sports confirmed the kickoff time for all 10 Big Sky Conference football games of the week, including 6 kickoff times when the Grizz are featured on the regional network, including announcing a noon kickoff for the annual rivalry showdown between Montana State and Montana in Bozeman.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Like a stone.
Now, I don't know if Mumford & Sons is Celtic per se, but it's
Irish.
I mean, it's more Celtic than country or metal. Heading in the direction. Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway, Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. And we welcome in the coach of the Corvallis track and field team, and also today the representative for the Bitterroot Celtic Games our old friend Garrett Middleton. Garrett, how are you, man? Welcome back to the show. Good to have you on.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. You get to be our Opportunity Bank coach for our Coach's Corner. Let me tell you something. That's nothing to take lightly. You know what I mean?
Huge honor. You stand in front of a sign.
That's right.
It's
you
great.
get the whole thing. So let's jump into this thing. The Bitterroot Celtic Games has, I think, gathered a lot of momentum over the years, and is something that is now kind of a known commodity in the region. That this is something that happens each year down at the Daly Mansion, in Hamilton. But we know that there's a lot of people coming and going in the state and in Western Montana and turnover and stuff like that. So just again, reset for us the sort of idea behind what this whole event is.
Well, the event here in Hamilton, it's the 10th year of the Celtic Games and Gathering. And a group of people about 11 years ago got together and said, hey, we need to celebrate our Celtic heritage. And we started 10 years ago, and now it's what you see now. And actually in Hamilton this year, it's Celtic Week. The mayor proclaimed it Celtic Week in Hamilton.
That's pretty good. That's the thing you got to be when you can when you're just the executive and you get to make proclamations about your town. That's pretty great,
especially when it's a good town like Hamilton. Everybody knows what's going on. So tell us about first the sporting aspect of this, but then also about some of the other stuff, because you guys have other things going on besides just the actual games. But start with, I mean, you got some fun stuff. Anybody out there watching on SWX Montana? We got the pitchfork here. So what do you do with this thing?
Well, you don't just toss hay with it. We toss the sheaf, and the sheaf is one of the events that you'll see going on at the games this weekend. And it's a 16-pound burlap bag, and you stab your pitchfork in it, and you throw it as high as you can.
So how high is high? What's a good mark?
Well, 30 foot is a pretty good mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really high.
I mean, you're talking about a bowling ball.
Yeah, right.
On the end of a pitchfork.
A big bowling ball, too.
I mean, it's big, but it's 16 pounds, right?
That's right, 16 pounds.
Yeah. That sounds like a broken back to me.
No doubt. Okay, so then what would you call this guy here?
So what you got there, well, we talked about track and field before, and that is the first hammer. That is a Scottish hammer.
Ah!
So 16-pound ball and a 50-inch PVC pipe.
So you're throwing this hammer style, spinning in the circle.
Well, you're not actually spinning, so you have to be planted. Your feet are in the ground. You can't move your feet, and you spin around your head 3 times and let it go behind you.
You do like the helicopter with it.
Right, but you have to be planted.
You have to be planted.
Feet planted.
Dang. Yeah. Okay, so for those that are listening on the radio and cannot see, this is I would say about a 4-foot PVC.
50-inch, yes.
Yep, about 4-foot PVC pipe and this is a shot put, right?
Basically,
yeah. 16-pound shot.
Did you make this?
I do make those. Yes.
How do you make this?
A lot of trial and error.
What do you call this thing?
It seems like dangerous if you don't have the PVC properly attached. The ball goes shooting off, and now you're breaking all manner of things.
That's true, but with the PVC, you got the bell end, so it just wedges in there just right.
What do you call this thing?
It's Scottish hammer.
Scottish hammer. I love it. That's great.
What other events are going on? Like the athletic event? Are you throwing timber?
We are, yeah, absolutely. Montana here, got plenty of trees, but these we toss cabers, the telephone poles, and those can range. We have little ones for the kids, all the way up to 20 foot and 128 pounds.
So you've been coaching throws at Corvallis, you said, for 15 years, so that's cool. But it seems like there's a little bit of crossover here between the traditional modern track and field sports and some of these stuff. That must be interesting for you to kind of see the origin of the hammer throw or the origin of some of these other throwing events.
Absolutely. That's kind of where the, say Olympics got their start. And in Scotland, where you have the 2 stone throws, which looks just like the Olympic shot put.
Right.
And the hammer throw is very similar to the Scottish hammer. And you also have the weights for distance, and it's kind of a discus style technique.
So this is not just a Montana thing, though, right? I mean, there's a way to kind of climb the ladder in the Celtic Games, and I mean, there's championships and things for this.
That's right. Yeah, there's world championships. I mean, you have them for men, so you have professional athletes that travel all over the country, U.S. and outside, and you have women's professional, as long as masters world championships.
The Bitterroot Celtic Games and Gathering. It's Saturday and Sunday. There's a little bit on Friday night, which Garrett can tell us about. Online, bcgg.org. If people want to go down and see this, tickets, food? What's the situation down there? How does it work?
Situation is the best plan is to park at Hamilton High School, and you get a free shuttle from Hamilton High School. Get dropped off right at the gates.
Which is good, because if we know one thing about Celtic games, probably going to need a ride.
that would be a smart idea.
Okay. Very good. So park at the high school. You'll get a ride over to the Daily Mansion.
Yep. You get out. I believe tickets for adults are $10, and kids are under that. I know 11 and under is free. So if you have little ones, you're not paying for them to get in the doors.
Cool.
And there's stuff going on all day on Saturday from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m.
And this is cool too, because you can go and you can watch the Scottish Hammer. You can go watch the pitchfork toss and all the other ones as well. But there's also a ton of music. There's dancing, I know, that's going on at this thing, and not just like stand up and dance, but actually classes and things like that. Right? People teaching how to do traditional kind of folk and Celtic style dances.
Right. This is a learning event as well too. So we have people teaching you what the clans are, and how to dance, and the piping and the drumming, and everybody's very friendly. So anybody has a question, just go see somebody with a kilt on and ask them some questions.
Now I know Ryan wants to know, what can he drink down there? Got some beers going on?
Yeah, I know they have plenty of those going on, and you also have some mead and Scotch tasting as well too.
Okay.
What is the thing to you when you go down there? You've been at this kind of year in and year out now for some time, Garrett, but what are the things when you go down there that you look forward to the most?
I really look forward to just seeing everybody that you get to meet over the years. And we come from all different backgrounds and all over Montana and the Northwest. And just seeing people year after year, and we're all there kind of for the same reason, to celebrate our heritage and really just to have a good time.
Is there a higher quotient of redheads at this event than the general population?
I believe so, because Scotland does have the most redheads.
Right,
yeah.
That's the deal, right? Isn't that the thing? Okay. Again, it's the Bitterroot Celtic Games and Gathering. It is Saturday and Sunday, a little bit Friday evening if you're looking for it. Again, bcgg.org. You can go check it out, get tickets, make plans to go down. This is an awesome event. It's a ton of fun for anybody that wants to go. You're going to see some very cool sports that you're not going to see anywhere else if you go down to it, and also just have an enjoyable time, learn a little something, and get to know your friendly Bitterroot neighbors.
Maybe even get a cool shirt, huh?
Yeah,
I mean, that's like the family crest on there. Is this from your clan?
No, that's the Rampant Lion used for our logo on the early spring games that we put on.
Very good.
Now,
very
how's
nice.
the Corvallis track and field team looking? Are we feeling good about being the throws coach over there for Corvallis?
Oh, absolutely. Feel good about it every year.
I mean, Corvallis is. When was the last time you guys didn't place top three? My whole time covering sports in Montana, it seems like Corvallis is in the mix every year.
We are. We got a great coaching staff and a lot of great kids that come through that want to work hard for us.
How much did you throw, like in high school and college?
I did. I threw discus and shot put in high school.
And when did you start throwing the Celtic stuff?
Ooh, they would have been actually 10 years ago.
Okay, when it
started, I watched it on ESPN, and I always wanted to do it, but there was nothing ever close by. And so what did I do? YouTube it.
Yeah.
And learn how to throw some things.
Right. That's fantastic. Well, Garrett, we appreciate that. Best of luck to you in the upcoming in some months away, track and field season. And look forward to this weekend down at the Daily Mansion in Hamilton. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you guys.
It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Quick break. When we come back, Root Sports schedule is set, and who should be the czar of sports? We'll answer both of these questions next.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
It happens. You're positive you put your bank card back in your wallet, but the next time you need it, it's missing. Avoid the panic and take control with the MyCard app and debit card from Farmers State Bank. Our app lets you control your debit card and securely turn it off right from your phone. Safe, secure, instant. MyCard is available only at Farmers State Bank. Ask about it at any of our 9 locations or learn more at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, member FDIC.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River. Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain, they still need to get to work, they need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at MontanaAdvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate. In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at SelwayArmory.com.
This is Todd Frank from Trailhead River Sports. We drop the paddle. Well, technically, we drop the prices on our complete selection of paddle boards and paddleboard accessories. Like our entire stock of PFDs, paddle clothing, and SUP accessories are all 20% off. Check out the Big Tau 10-6 board package. Board, paddle, pump, and a bag for just $6.99 complete. If you haven't been in, come see the biggest selection of rafting and paddle sports equipment in the region at Trailhead River Sports on Garfield next to Southgate Mall.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
Root Sports. The schedule is out for the Big Sky Conference football game of the week. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway and Missoula Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. At Gus Tutel, at 102.9 ESPN, and at Skyline Sports MT on Twitter. Come check us out. We appreciate that. Colter, a couple things I want to go through here with you. First of all, the schedule and kickoff times have been officially released here for the game of the week from Root Sports. And the Montana Grizzlies are featured in the Root Sports game of the week 6 times. Now, add to that one Pac-12 network game, and also the requisite one-time Pluto TV only game that all Big Sky teams are subject to 1 week where it's a Pluto only game. May have to check into that. But in any case, 6 times on Root Sports, far and away the most of any other team. Montana State is featured 2 times. One of those games, of course, being the Cat Grizz game at the last game of the year. And, okay, Washington Grizzlies, the biggest stadium in the Big Sky Conference, draws the most fans. And so, that's obviously in terms of the visual that you get, best case scenario for the TV. Bozeman is, has the second largest stadium, largest venue, and most fans in the Big Sky. And yet they're only on twice. But the other thing that I think is worth considering this particular year, because there's 12 teams that are playing Big Sky Conference football that are rolling their eyes at least at this schedule when it is released, is the fact that the University of Montana, as we have talked about quite a lot, plays all 4 of the projected, themselves being one of the projected top 5 teams in the Big Sky Conference. They're the only team that does that. So it is partially about Montana being Montana, but it's also about the strength of schedule. And the fact is that they have the hardest schedule, which means they are also playing, frankly, more marquee games than other top teams in the Big Sky Conference. And so, Eastern Washington is featured 3 times. They went to the national championship game last year. They have half of the Root Sports games that Montana has. You know what? They also play 2 teams that are expected to be in the top 5 of the Big Sky Conference this season. And so that's at least a significant part, seems to me, of why that is the case and why they are not on more, and why other teams aren't on more than what Montana is. The other thing that's worth, first of all, let me just give you a chance on that. I mean, that is a very real consideration to make with a grossly unbalanced schedule like you have here, and the chips may and will fall to other teams' benefit, if it is a benefit to be on television on Root Sports, which I think it is, in subsequent years. But this is the year. I mean, Montana's always going to be considered first in this, but then it's accentuated. It's augmented by the fact that they have such a compelling schedule if you're putting this together from a television standpoint.
Certainly, and it gives you a chance to put Weber State on TV while also playing Montana.
Right.
I mean, that game's in Missoula, right? Like, why wouldn't you want that game to be on television? I mean, you have the premier venue in the league, and you have the Big Sky champions in Weber State coming to the premier venue in the league, which they haven't been here in several years. So, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Eastern Washington, Montana, that's going to be on TV, period, whether it's in Cheney or Missoula. That's going to be the Root Sports game of the week if it's on the schedule. I think that the most interesting part about this schedule is that it's been not just Montana dominant since they struck this TV deal. It's been Montana and Montana State dominant. It's not Montana State dominant this year.
No, it's not.
The Cats are only on here one time besides Cat Grizz, right?
Yep.
So it's been 4 or 5 Montana State games and 4 or 5 Grizz games, and then the Cat Grizz game each year, almost every year. Now it's all these Montana games and not Montana State. That in itself, I think, is a point of contention on the other side of the hill, a point of great glee in Western Montana. A bragging right, to be sure, for the fan base of the Grizzlies. But I think there's a lot of compelling. I think the Grizz, to me, the Cats and the Grizz are the 2 most interesting teams in the Big Sky this year. And when you factor then also that the Grizz play the contenders, all the contenders, then it makes sense that the Grizz would have the most games on the television.
The one game that Montana State is playing on Root Sports that is not the Cat Grizz game is against Southern Utah in Bozeman on November 2nd. The 5 of the last 5 weeks feature either Montana or Montana State or both. The one game that Montana is on Root Sports that you would go, well, couldn't you have found a different game, is when the Grizz host Idaho State on October 5th. Now, Idaho State was a surprise team last year, a good football team. The other thing is, I don't know what the rest of the schedule looks like. Like, if Eastern Washington is playing Weber State that week, that's the game that should be on. But I don't know that that's the case. In fact, I'm sure it isn't the case. But that's the one thing. But when you look at Montana, UC Davis, yeah, I mean, that's going to be the game of the week. Regardless, and it's not about
the Cats. The Cats NAU could be
at UC Davis.
I mean, the Cats at NAU that week isn't or the other way around. NAU at Montana State is an intriguing game, but it's not the defending league champions hosting. I mean, I'm trying to think of. I mean, this is one of the crazy calamities of this Big Sky's unbalanced schedule. I'm trying to think of the last time the Grizz went to Davis. I'm not actually sure the Grizz have been to Davis. I mean, I'm trying to think. It's been a little while. It's been since we expanded Skyline to cover the Grizz, since they've been to Davis, I'm pretty sure.
Well, they go down to Davis the next week. That September 28th, that opens Big Sky Conference play. The next week will also be a Root Sports game in Missoula against Idaho State. Then Northern Colorado at Eastern Washington. Idaho State at Idaho is the October 19th game, which I'm thrilled that this is a Root Sports game. This makes me very happy. And then after that, it's just Montana and Montana State. It's Eastern Washington at Montana on the 26th. Of course, that game, no matter where it's going to be played, is going to be the Root Sports game. Southern Utah at Montana State. It's a good game for the Cats to have on there. Then Idaho at Montana in, another rivalry-esque game in Missoula. Then Weber State at Montana, which is certainly going to be the game of the week in the Big Sky. I mean, who knows how the season goes, but from this end, when you have to schedule it in advance, it's not like you can flex games into it, from a Root Sports standpoint. It's not, you got to set the schedule now. That's the game of the week for sure. And then, of course, the culmination of all of it on the 23rd in Bozeman with Cat Grizz. So, I mean, that's where you're at. The
most indicative part of this schedule to me, because Root Sports has had the television contract for at least 6 years, maybe since the league expanded to 13 teams in 2012. It might have been as long as, they might be the 8th season. It's either 6 or 8 years, but they've had it for a handful of years, no doubt. There's a lot of times in the last 5 years where not marquee games have been on the schedule just because they involve the Cats or the Grizz. I mean, like the Cats at Northern Colorado has been on Root Sports.
Right.
The Grizz at Idaho State has been on Root Sports. To me, this indicates just that Root Sports is paying a lot better of attention. That they're picking the games based on the quality of the matchups.
Yeah.
I think it also helps, though. It helps so much when the Cats, the Grizz, and Eastern Washington are all expected to be good, because then you can just pick from those three teams. Okay, who else is going to be good? Okay, who are they playing? Okay, what's the best matchup? It just makes it a lot easier when you have more of the quote-unquote premier teams better.
This is the other thing I want to ask you about this, too, Till Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television, is the Northern Alabama game. Now, this is the Montana schedule with all the times in here. A 1 o'clock kickoff at South Dakota. All these times, by the way, are Mountain times. 7 p.m. first home game under the lights. Montana State also, I know, opens their season at home either 6 or 7 o'clock kickoff. Then the following week at Oregon, 8:45 kickoff Mountain Standard Time, 7:45 Pacific Time on the Pac-12 network. Then you got another afternoon kickoff against Monmouth. It's 2 o'clock against UC Davis, but again, that Pacific Time is 1 o'clock Pacific Time, so it's still 1 o'clock, but 2 o'clock. Idaho State the following week, 1 o'clock. Then at Sacramento State, a 7 o'clock Mountain Time kickoff on Fox there. Then noon against Eastern Washington. Then 3. So all the Root Sports games are kind of afternoon games for the most part. But afternoon is a traditional, like 1 o'clock is kind of the traditional Mountain Time Zone kickoff, right? And with the exception, historically, going back, say, 5 years ago and before. So I'm talking about recent history now. You would have you would have one night game. I mean, if you go back, we can almost all of us remember when there was no lights at Washington Grizzly Stadium, and there was no such thing as a night game. You were playing a day game.
The first time I remember a night game was in the 2006 playoffs.
They brought lights
ESPN
in.
Had to bring the lights in.
Yes.
And then they lost to UMass by 2 points. Yeah, sophomore in college, Colter Nuanez was one sad panda that day.
Tough deal.
I mean, we celebrated all day leading up to what we thought was going to be a surefire victory over UMass, and then it was not.
It's tough. Well, John Calipari is a great coach. So, but here's the thing that I want to touch on here. You go 1 o'clock week 1, 7 o'clock week 2, 8:45 week 3, back to 1 o'clock. Then you got some afternoon games, and then right in the middle of it, another night game at Sacramento State, and then a weird 3 o'clock kickoff, at Portland State. And so it jumps around quite a bit, and it's always so. This is my own ignorance or whatever. I always find it so funny, I guess is the word I'll use, about the just amount of consternation that the varying start times cause coaches. Now, I am aware, and by the way, I talked about this. Riley Corcoran, a little preview here, is our guest for the ESPN Roundtable tomorrow, and he is the voice of the Grizz, and we talked about this a little bit tomorrow. And he is, as the play-by-play guy for the University of Montana, he travels with the team, and he, will eat with the team. He's there all the time. He sees the progression of, this is when we're going to wake up because this is when the kickoff is. So we're going to wake up now. We're going to go eat now. We're going to stretch here. We're going to rest here. Then we're going to go to the stadium. We're going to get, our initial spat done and all that kind of stuff, the walkthroughs and so forth. Then we're going to come back, get dressed up, and go out. So my point is, I'm well aware that there is a lot and a lot that I don't even know about the logistics of preparing to just even walk out onto the field to get ready to kick off a football game. But the annoyance, the level of annoyance that many football coaches have at having grossly varied kickoff times seems to me like it's just the narcissism of college football coaches. Like it's just this, like all you got to do is like, okay, if you normally kick off at 1 and you got to do this at this time and now you're kicking off at 7, add 6 hours. And just do it 6 hours later. Like, that's the thing. But I think it's the time clock of the body clock, and now it's weird for the players or whatever, and you got to switch it up. But you know what? Switch it up. Like this, the habituated thing that is college football, both in practice and in preparation for a game, seems it's just crazy to me.
Did you ever play a sport that's tournament-based? So sometimes, you like baseball, for example. When you're playing just regular season, just there's not high school baseball, but high school level age baseball, whether it's Babe Ruth or American Legion. You always play your games in the evenings.
Yeah.
And then when you get to tournament time,
you get a 9 a.m.
Sometimes you got an 8 a.m., a 9 a.m., a 10 a.m.
Yes, I have. I have done that in basketball.
It is different.
Yeah.
It is different.
It certainly is.
And like a school like Montana State, Jeff Choate has really, really, really wanted to let the guys have a high priority on academics. So they practice in the morning. And some people would say that that's really foolish in Bozeman, Montana in the spring because it's not spring. It's winter in March in Bozeman, no doubt. At 6 a.m., it is -10, and there is so much snow on that field. You're calling the facilities guys at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, hey, come out here and plow this thing for me. We're going to go today. But then if you're used to practicing at 6 a.m. and you got to play at 6 p.m., it's a little different deal. But I agree, leading up to the game, just acclimate yourself to it. Practice that time for a week or a couple weeks.
I mean, here's the thing. Is like if the issue is we're used to going out here and running around and hitting each other at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and now we got to wait till 7. And look, Riley brought up a good point. These kids, even if they're not practicing at 6 a.m., a lot of them are up at 5 a.m. I mean, they're up. The Montana players practice. They're practicing right now. They practice in the middle of the afternoon. But they've lifted. They got a morning lift at 5:30, 6 a.m., whatever it is. And, I don't know the progressions of all that. I don't think it's all the players every day or whatever. But, they're up and at them, and they're getting after it, early in the day. Well, if your norm is getting up at 5 a.m., going to do something physical, then eating, then going to class, okay, then coming back for practice, then going and studying, eating dinner, and going to bed. And now you're in bed at 9 o'clock. And then you go to Oregon, and you're kicking the ball off at 8:45. There's got to be some coffees in there somewhere for you. I mean, you think a college kid is like, well, what's the big deal? They're up till 2 a.m. Well, not the football team, the athletes in general, like throughout the course of the week, they're
going to bed. We're going to bed before me and you.
They got to be up at 6 a.m. Like even if they wanted to go out and close it down, they couldn't. I mean, they could, but then they'd pay for it. So that's the thing that I do understand, but also it's the same presumably for your opponent too, right? Like it's just the same for them. So I don't know. Put a nap in there. 2 o'clock. Team nap time, back in the hotel room. But I just don't, it doesn't seem like something that you got that maybe I'm making it bigger than they're making. I'm not taking, by the way, nobody said any, Jeff Choate, Bobby Hauck, or anybody else wasn't going off on this at any time. I'm just talking broadly about coaches and the things that they seem to make is just changes their whole world dynamic.
I think there's an element too, though, of just getting mentally prepared for game day. When you have a noon kickoff, that's a perfect time because you can wake up at a good you can wake up at a good amount of time. You get a good night's sleep, but still wake up early. Have breakfast so it's not too close to when you're going to have to perform. Start getting hydrated, get taped. The whole process. It takes several hours, but then all of a sudden you're ready to roll because you've been up and you have that morning energy still.
But here,
whereas when you have to just wait the whole time, I feel like when there's nerves and stuff like that, it does affect your performance a little bit if you're not used to it. And you have to remember, college football players, the best of the best of the best ever. Guys like Robbie Grimsley and Easton Stick, who won 4 national championships and never lost a game, played it in the championship game 4 years in a row. You still only play 60 games in your whole career.
Right. But here's the thing. It also varies by guy, right? Like a guy like me, if we're kicking off at noon and I got to be up at 7, now I realize if you're getting up at 5 a.m. every single day, you get used to it and all that. And I've had plenty of times in my life where I've had to be up at 4:35 a.m. every day for long stretches, and you work into it. But it's not what I prefer. I would love having a 5 o'clock kickoff. Let me sleep in till 10. Get up, have brunch, brush my teeth, walk around for a while, and then start the process at 1 o'clock and getting ready to go. The other thing, if I'm a college football player and it's Saturday and I got to play at 7:45 p.m. Pacific time, you know what I'm going to do? Watch football. You never get to watch college football if you're a college football player. The great irony.
I think that's the point of consternation, is that I highly doubt that any coach, whether it's a home or away game, is letting his guys sit at home and watch college football. I guarantee you're reporting to the stadium at the same time, and then you're just sitting there.
Why?
I don't know.
Insane.
I don't know why. All the stuff that these guys do is insane.
Dude, just go and watch Wisconsin, Iowa.
I mean, I don't know, man.
Watch them play some football and just chill out.
The whole thing is insane, man. You're not even allowed to watch practice anymore.
Look, man.
This is good. This is a good tangent. This is good. This is a good tangent really quick, though, here.
Okay.
I got an email from my dear mother yesterday, and she's always researching all sorts of things. But I thought this was very interesting. She said this is an email about sleep. This is a study about sleep. It said in sleep research, there's different chronotypes referring to genetically predisposed best times to wake up and best hours to keep focused based on your actual DNA. So when people say they're night owls, and then other people, they seriously cannot stay up past 8 p.m.
Right.
They have to get up at 4 a.m.
You're a driving hazard after
I mean,
dark.
like my old man used to go to bed at like 7:30. It is like we got to eat dinner at 4 because I'm going to bed at 7 because I'm waking up at 3:30 or 4. Like it is on. Like I am up before the sun. But that's a real thing. There is an early chronotype found through research, commonly known as the early bird. Refers to somebody who likes to rise very early, usually before the sunrise. A normal chronotype is somebody that typically rises around sunrise. I think that's kind of like you. Aren't you? You're an after guy. Okay.
I mean, sunrise maybe in winter. When sunrise is at 9:30.
Okay. And then there is the late chronotype, refers to commonly known as night owls. Most people fall naturally into one of these 3 types.
On the sleep and
Okay,
performance.
so there's 3 of them.
3 types,
generally speaking.
Yep. The Hazara people of Tanzania are hunter-gatherers whose lifestyles remain much like early humans, perhaps the most like early humans of any population on Earth. There's the line with the Sentinel theory, first proposed in 1960. In essence, it says that somebody that needs to stay awake to keep watch for a predator at any time of the night or day will.
Okay.
So sometimes your environment can influence you as much as your chronotypes.
Let's open up the phones on this. 329-1899 if you'd like to get in. We welcome Jasper to the show. Wants to talk to us a little bit about the sleep schedule. Jasper, what do you got? Where are you at on this?
Hey, I was just wondering if you guys had any notions on whether or not, like, the analysis on sleep and focus comes too much from the perspective of, like, a 30-something or 40-something-year-old man. Because we're talking about young kids who are in adrenaline-filled situations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nothing is going to snap you into focus more like being in a game-time situation. Whereas, like, these studies, and we're talking about peak focus, we're talking about, like, the relatively small differences in, like, our day-to-day focus. Whereas what we're really talking about is a young person who's much more physically flexible than the analysts are in hyper adrenaline-filled situations.
Jasper, I think it's a great point, and thanks for the call. Actually, a fantastic, because you're right. When he's talking about focus, it's like, when's the best time for me to read a book? But, like, if you woke me up at 2 a.m. and my house was being robbed, guess what? I'm locked in, buddy, right here, right now. It's not going to take me any time to get going. And the same thing, like when you walk out that tunnel and that ball's kicking off. I mean, Colter, you and I have both been on the football field, even high school, whatever. Doesn't matter when. You start, when that kickoff happens and you're running down to cover a kick, 3 a.m., 3 p.m., does not matter. Let's go, right? I mean, that's the feeling that you have on that.
For sure. No doubt. I think it is an interesting point. And I don't know. I think that there's a lot of different variables here, no doubt. But I also think what you're saying, your main premise is that it's a lot more exaggerated than it needs to be.
Well, it is, and I think, and again, I think Jasper makes a great point. The issue really isn't about the game time, right? It is about talking about like the lag time if it's a night game and these 4 hours in between and the nerves that can build up. If you're nervous, you got more energy that you're using. And I have experienced this playing, sports in, playing lacrosse in college, playing, football before that, where you're always ready to go at the beginning. But sometimes all of a sudden you just don't have anything left in the tank. It's not because you're not well conditioned. It's not because you weren't prepared to go, but you just sort of you can kind of blow your load, so to speak, your energy beforehand, before the kickoff of the game, the start of the football game, start of the lacrosse game, whatever, and come to the third quarter, you're sitting there and go, I don't know why I can't run around. I don't know why I'm a step slow here. Well, maybe it's because you were literally doing nothing, but you were in anticipation mode, and now all of a sudden you get to the point where you need it, and maybe it's not there. Now, I don't know how you combat that necessarily, but again, I think the sleep thing and the kickoff thing and all that is made too much of.
It is interesting thinking about young people. There's been a couple high schools that I think there's been more than a couple, but there's been a couple high schools that have gone that have been part of experimental studies of moving when school starts back a little while. Start school at 9 and have it go until 5 instead of starting school at 7 and having it go till 3. It's dual reasons. One, let the kids get a little bit better sleep, be more rested, then nobody's falling asleep in their first period class. You have a much more realistic chance to eat breakfast, likely, because you just have a little bit more time. But then also, when almost every kid get in trouble between 3:30 and 5:30 before their parents get home. So then they're getting off work at the same time as their parents too. So I don't know. It's interesting. I always thought it was funny that, like a Big Sky High School, when we were in high school, is 7:15 is when it starts. There's very few jobs. I mean, there's a lot of 8 to 5ers. There's a lot of 9 to 5ers. There's very few 7 a.m.ers. I mean, there's people that get up early to start working and stuff. But as far as like just a traditional job, hardly anybody has to be at school at the time that the high school kids do.
Mr. V, God bless him, over there at Franklin Elementary, was Alethea's kindergarten teacher. And, we're trying to figure it out. She's our first child in school. I want to say something along the line. I think there's maybe 26 or 30 tardies. Well, guess what? Tardies, it's not the responsibility of the kindergartner.
It's dad.
It's dad, 100%. And, I must say, I own this. This is on me. I mean, I'm the adult here. I should be able to get my child to the thing. But the idea that school, and this was, I think they started at 8, right at 8. But the idea that you're starting school at 7 or 7:15 or even 7:50, whatever, it's insane to me. Insane to me. Now, I know, I got a lot of friends who look at me like I got 4 heads, okay? Because I got some friends who got some kids. They're up at 4. They're up at 5 o'clock. They go, what do you mean you're asleep at 7:30? We've been up 2 hours at 7:30. And I go, you got to be kidding. And they go, and I'm like, why are you here? Because invariably, it's 9 p.m. when we're seeing each other. What are you even doing? How are you alive at this time if you've been up since 5:30 with your children running around the place? Listen, I don't contribute much to my family, okay? I don't contribute much to
Besides
my
the
kids,
only one that has a job.
That is not true. Why are you trying to put me in the doghouse like this on live radio? Now, but the one thing that I do think that both Tina and I did pretty good job of from a Gene standpoint is giving our kids the eat gene and giving our kids the sleep gene. And that will always be one of the great gifts I've ever received, was that the kids, look, Zoe, 4 years old, 9 o'clock on the daily, maybe later. I mean, it's glorious. You know what I mean? Now, I can't help you out there if your kids are up at 5 a.m. chomping at the bit to get going. If my kids wake up at 5 o'clock, I can promise you what's going to happen. Nothing. They can go wander around the house. They can turn on all the water. We can get a flood going. I'm out, buddy. I'm out. You're up right now? Go do your thing. I don't know. Yeah, play with the rabbit. Let's see what happens. I'm not getting up. So that's, tough life. Tutel Nuanez, our number one in the books. We didn't get to the czar of sports. We will get to it. We will also talk a little bit of Seahawks football. We might talk about AB's new old helmet, which he has gotten. We'll cover what we can, and also in a half an hour, Tommy Evans going to make an appearance and certainly not be able to defend himself. Coulter, this is the day. I mean, it's like, 78 degrees out there, sunshine. We had a minor hurricane blow through over the weekend, and now it's all back to normal, and it's time to get to the golf course. And if you want to go golfing, you got to go to the Canyon River Golf Club. Canyon River out there in East Missoula, spectacular setting, as you know. The club is in perfect shape. The greens, perfect. The grass, perfect. It is beautiful. And the course is 100% rocking and rolling. They have a brand new fleet of golf carts. We've been telling you about this with the Shark Experience, the interactive, holes that you can touch, set up shots, no distances, and all of that. Surround sound music, Bluetooth, satellite radio, all of that. You can also, if you want to even go faster, get on the Fin Cycle, a motorcycle golf cart. I mean, let's go, Sun Mountain Sports. There you go, developing something useful and fun and enjoyable. Everybody complaining about the pace of play. Look, Brooks Koepka got nothing on me on that Fin Cycle when I'm riding around, unless, of course, I wreck it. I'll try not to do that. But you go, you ride around, you put the golf clubs right there in front of you, you ride a motorcycle around the golf course playing golf. That is a good time, people. Online, CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. You can make tee times. You can save a ton of money, too. They always have great, fire-to-style savings on daily tee times on their website. You can find a bunch of other specials as well down at the Fox Den. The ultimate golf experience in and around Missoula, the Canyon River Golf Club. CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Go now.
Hey, Tutel Nuanez here. Can't tell you how many times we've heard the face for radio joke since we came on SWX television, but it's been a fun endeavor so far.
And now our esteemed producer Tommy is pushing the envelope even further. We got our own YouTube channel.
That's right. If you want to watch us every day from your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, you can check out Tutel Nuanez on YouTube.
Tutel Nuanez, live every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoons on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula, SWX Montana statewide, and now around the planet Earth on YouTube. Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Alpine Touch has been providing you with the distinct seasonings you know and love for decades. Now, Alpine Touch has something to help you unleash the freshness of all the delicious flavors you need to spice up any meal. Check out Alpine Touch's new coarse grinds, unleashing the fresh taste of the garlic pepper or all-purpose seasonings to please any nose or taste bud. Coarse grinds can be purchased by the pound at retail locations around the state or at alpinetouch.com. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Here at Florence Coffee, our Huckleberry Lemonade is a favorite to our lineup of refreshing summer drinks.
For a fun twist on my favorite drink, you can get it made with our house-brewed iced black tea or soda water for a fizzy treat that's sure to beat the summer heat.
So stop by any Flowco locations throughout Western Montana and visit FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Florence Coffee Company.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here with Josh from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident and need help dealing with the insurance company, you should give The Advocates a call.
It doesn't cost anything at all to call, and I'd be happy to talk with you about your situation. You don't want to have to be dealing with contacting the insurance companies and setting up your claim. We can do that for you from start to finish. We'll take the hassle out of the process so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give Josh a call, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers, but you deserve an advocate.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez. Here's some sports news. Montana State will have its fifth different starting quarterback over the 4-year tenure of Jeff Choate, as they have named now, as of Monday, Casey Bauman, their starter under center to begin the 2019 season. The 6'7", 235-pound QB from Northwestern Washington has a great arm and surprising mobility, but he's only played 6 snaps in Division I action. Bauman beat out sophomore Tucker Rovig, a 6'5", 205-pounder out of Boise, who started against South Dakota State and Wagner last season for the Bobcats. Bauman takes over an offense that averaged 37 points and 434 yards per game after Matt Miller took over as the offensive coordinator with 6 games remaining in the season.
Missoula Osprey lost in extra innings again on Monday, falling 4-3 to the Ogden Raptors in 11 innings. The loss means the O's are no longer in first place in the Pioneer League North after suffering their 3rd straight setback. The Raptors have now won 10 more games than everybody else in the 8-team Pioneer League and are now 5-0 against Missoula.
Root Sports confirmed the kickoff of its 10 Big Sky Conference football games of the week, including 6 kickoff times, which the Grizz are featured on the regional network, and 2 for Montana State. That includes a noon kickoff for the annual rivalry showdown between Montana State and Montana this year in Bozeman.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Take a high dive into a drink. Some people.
Welcome back to Tell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Who should be the czar of sports? I got one answer for you. In fact, I got 2, but really one. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at kurtzpolaris.com. And find us on the World Wide Web as well, 1029ESPN.com. There you can listen to the streams brought to us by Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you missed anything in the first hour, shame on you. But it's okay. We got it. We got it sorted out for you. You can listen on the podcast. The podcast available on the TuneIn Radio app and on iTunes and on Spotify. I'm just kidding. It's okay if you missed a little bit. Okay? You're here now, and that's what we appreciate. Podcast available on all your favorite podcasting platforms. It is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. You go listen to it, like it, review it, all that stuff. Appreciate that. If you want to call, 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Rangish Brothers RV phone line. Coulter, you wanted to talk about who should run this show. Not this show, the show that is sports in America. Are we talking college or professional, by the way, or both? Is it just everything? The head person for sports.
Yeah, I think we should just talk about
the minister of sports.
The minister of sports in America. And maybe he has some fellow czars that run the pro leagues for him.
I got 2 answers for you. I'll give you the most reasonable answer, but then I will give you the right answer. The most reasonable answer is Condoleezza Rice. She should be the sports czar. She knows what in the world is going on in the sports world. She cares about it very much. She is on the selection committee, or at least has been, for the college football playoff, and as far as I can tell, a talented administrator. The right answer, however, is Mike Leach. There is no question that if it pertains to sports, that Mike Leach should be the one making the decisions. He will be able to creatively find answers and solutions to problems that arise, and knows enough and is able to communicate in such a way to be efficacious in bringing about all the things you would like to bring about. I suppose you don't need that much sort of diplomacy if you are the czar. You just sort of, I take it that you're just kind of the king. Like you make your asseveration and it becomes so. But I think that I can trust Mike Leach to make great choices, and I would like to listen to him explain to me exactly why Highlight is going to be taking a prominent primetime slot on ESPN television. So that is the man who should be doing this. Anybody else is just foolhardy.
This is funny. Mike Leach is so out there. He's funny for sure, but his shtick is growing old to me.
No, it's not a shtick.
I know. But
So
he
you
knows.
can't call
But
it
he
that.
knows.
If it was a shtick, it would become tiresome, but it's not. It's who he is. That's why it's great, because it's real.
There's no way he doesn't know the attention that he's receiving for the way that he acts.
Fine.
So there's a little bit of
being aware
performance.
Being aware of it, and having not just be who you. Who wouldn't want him up there sniffling and coughing every 3 seconds, talking about how the best way to not get in trouble with your future bride and her mother is at a press conference or whatever?
I just don't know, man. Maybe my sense of humor is broken, but I've never thought that any of the stuff he says is as funny as the rest of the world thinks it is.
It is. Your sense of humor is broken then. Yes.
It's like kind of funny.
No.
You're way more funny than Mike Leach.
Here's the issue. 100% true.
See?
Mike Leach, though, Mike Leach is funny because he's funny, but he's also incredibly funny because he is in a position where no one is funny. And it's always just the bland, banal, dry, sandy answers that we get from everybody all the time, and he's up there talking about walking home with goblins.
You know what's the funniest? You know who's the funniest college football coach? I think the world would say Mike Leach. But I think that Mike Leach, even if you think he is the funniest, I think he's a distant second to somebody that most people have never heard of. And this man will never reach the platform of Mike Leach because he's that funny. He's just too offensive to actually have a Pac-12 job. It's Bruce Barnum. Bruce Barnum is the Portland State is just so funny. It's not possible.
You win. Yes, you are right.
But Bruce Barnum, I just don't think he could get through the ceiling of being an FCS coach because
here's my question.
He's just too funny.
How would Barney be as the czar?
Oh, man. Well, we'd all be eating Dots pretzels.
I mean.
Have I told you this story?
Oh, yeah.
The Dots pretzels from North Dakota. Bruce Barnum is their number one endorser. I think he actually gets contributions to his program for peddling Dots pretzels. He was throwing out bags of Dots pretzels at the Big Sky kickoff. It was solid gold. Allegedly, don't know if this story is true or not, but I believe it to be true. Allegedly.
You want it to be true.
Yeah, I want it to be true. He sent Bobby Houck a picture of the game-winning field goal from the Portland State game last year going through the uprights, but instead of the football, it was Dots pretzels with a bag of Dots. Thanks for being you, Bobby. Love Coach Barnum. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
He's unbelievable.
Here's the thing. You maybe experience this as you age and so forth, that there's two worlds that exist at school. There's the world that you thought was the whole world with you as a student, and you went to class and you were with your classmates and so forth and so on. But then there's a whole nother world that you find out about later, and it is the teacher's world. And the teachers, they have their little, no students allowed sections, the rooms that you can't go into in the back rooms, and then you find out about conversations and ways of being that you did not know that the teachers were in fact, up to. Not that sounds nefarious. I don't mean it to be bad, but I'm just saying It's a whole nother life.
Oh, when you're
and
a kid,
having honest conversations about you that you had no idea that people were actually thinking. The coaching world times 10. What the coaches do back and forth with one another when no one's around. I mean, it's the greatest show in the world. This is what's so frustrating because you and I, we sit here and we just want them to say anything. And then when you shut everything down and you go sit there and it is... I mean, it's just the greatest thing you've ever heard and listened to, and you just go, forever, this is what it should be. Why are we wasting our time asking about timeouts?
Bruce Barnum on my Big Sky Breakdown podcast last year was the single funniest, most outrageous interview I've ever done in my life. Like, Mike Leach can talk about the perils of proposing to a girl. It does not hold a candle to talking about Troy Anderson killing a steer with his hands to feed his teammates. It does not compare to him. It's not compared to him saying that the guys from Montana are so tough that they drink beer and smoke cigarettes in the locker room at halftime while getting Popeye tattoos on their arms. I mean, it's his gamesmanship is just out of control. It's so funny.
But the other thing is that Portland State, let me see. You run Skyline Sports, and in virtue of that, are the beat writer for the Portland State Vikings
and he gives it up.
But also, well, he gives it up. But also, you're kind of at liberty because if anyone, including Mike Leach, who probably has these thoughts, was to in fact say those things, now all of a sudden,
it's viral.
The whirlwind happens.
Totally.
And some of it's good, and maybe some of it isn't as good. And, everybody's terrified of saying whatever they shouldn't say. Nobody more than me. So
Bruce Barnum is such a classic that Portland State's first year he was the head coach. They had no money. They had to play 2 FBS games. They won both of them. But they called it, he took them on Barney's Americana Tour. They had 7 road games and only one, the game at North Texas, were they able to fly to it. And they subsequently had the biggest win in FCS history over an FBS team. They beat them 65-7, and Dan McClarney got fired in the locker room after the game. That in itself is a classic story.
Pretty great.
But the rest of their road trips, they took a bus. They bussed from Portland to Cal Poly. It's like 1,800 miles one way. And Bruce Barnum, out of his own pocket, he has no budget for the team that year. Out of his own pocket, he took the whole team to Alcatraz, took the whole team to the Los Angeles Zoo. Taking them out to steak dinners. Every home game that they won, he went across the street and bought every person that went into the stadium a drink.
Yes.
He's running up $8,000 tabs after games saying, thanks for coming. I mean, that is the stuff of legend. There's no one doing that.
There's no one doing that because no one has to do that.
Well, no doubt. But that's why it's just it's a fascinating thing that's going on at Portland State.
Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN.
Okay, so back to the Czar.
15 minutes from now, Tommy Evans going to come try and dig out of a hole. He will not be successful, but it will be worth listening to on the greatest frontmen in music history. Yes, you have not given me your wrong answer yet. And I don't care who you pick. You're not going to beat either of my two.
Well, I'm a little bit biased because the first person that introduced me to the concept of the sports czar is the guy who started talking about it the most early on as part of his candidacy to be the sports czar, and that's Bill Simmons. Bill Simmons has long said that he wants to be the sports czar of America and that he wants his two right-hand men to be Chuck Klosterman and Malcolm Gladwell because they're both critically thinking writers who also happen to like sports. And I actually think if those three guys, because they are just sort of sports nerds who are also intellectuals and creatives, I actually think that they would do a great job in terms of running the sports world.
Here's where I think something like the NCAA goes so wrong. And Mark Emmert has foiled this thing up over and over and over and over and over again. And we're all aware of it. But here's the issue. It is so simple when you can just think about the problems that sports has and create solutions, or think about the good things that sports does and how to accentuate them, and you have nothing else at all to think about than those things and come up with creative and reasonable ideas and solutions. When your first thought is about running an organization that happens to oversee a sports function,
especially when it's an organization that masquerades as a nonprofit. When it's making billions of dollars. Yes. Let's get a sports czar so we can get rid of the president of the NCAA.
All of it. But that's what I'm saying is, like, I understand the necessity, to implement things and so forth, of having an organization, of having an administration and all of that. And even though, and even if the North Star, the whole outfit is to pick, is to do right by the student athletes and by the sports, the reality is that in the interest of self-preservation and retaining a function at all, how about this? If the NCAA got it exactly right and implemented every rule perfectly and everybody was happy with it, and I'm not saying that's even possible, but I'm just saying that they would also simultaneously undercut their own need to exist. You know why there's laws in the United States of America that fill libraries? Because Congress' job is to write laws. That's what you're there to do, to build the book of laws. And now all of a sudden, well, why is the bureaucracy this? Well, why is the red tape that? Well, it's because, in some instances necessary, and in other instances it's because, it's what we're paid to do. It's what we're here to do. You build the thing. So
if I could have a special liaison for the NBA, Bill Walton.
Bill Walton is, that might be the one to tip the scales away from Mike Leach now. Problem is he can't shake anybody's hand. He can only dap.
Fist pump. What is that? Because he's a germaphobe?
He's a germaphobe.
Mm-hmm.
Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Did you want to talk about the Seahawks? Or do you have other czar things you want?
No, let's talk Seahawks real quick.
Okay. The Seattle Seahawks. So what Coulter and I have chosen to do is identify a few NFL teams that are regionally significant. And we don't have a ton of time right here, so we may come back to the Seahawks at a later date. But Seattle is now going to be airing all their games, all the Seahawks games, right here on ESPN Radio in Missoula. We're very happy to have the Seattle Seahawks on board. Their second preseason game, I got to look it up now. I think it's on Saturday. But we will have the Osprey game, and then we will go right into the Seahawks game for you. But we'll have the Seahawks on all year, and obviously they are the closest football team geographically to Western Montana. I think Billings is almost square in the middle between Minneapolis and Seattle. I'll have to get my geography sorted out. But I realize as you go further east across the great state here, then you get into more Vikings, dare I say Packers, and obviously also the Denver Broncos, a major following in the area. But Seattle, in Western Montana, I would say Seattle has the largest following. And I must say that I'm higher on the Seahawks than you are, but I have found myself not as high on the Seahawks as many national commentators that I've been listening to have been. And I'm kind of confused on this. Now, I will tell you, this weekend, Friday, by the way, boys and girls, dry your tears. I'm not here. I still got
TBD if I am.
I still got 7 weeks of vacation to use up, so I got to find it somewhere. So I'm going to use one on Friday, and it is for my fantasy football draft annual event. Great pilgrimage back to my friends. And so I have been doing research like mad trying to prepare for this thing. So a lot of the things I'm looking at are through the lens of fantasy football, but nonetheless, the lens of fantasy football does bring you in contact with teams and how they're going to be and what they're going to be doing. And the Seattle Seahawks do not have a running back of any note whatsoever. It's a 7th-round draft pick, Chris Carson, who is by all accounts, leader. He was the starter last year. And even though Rashad Penny was taken in the first round a year ago, he made almost no noise, got a little bit of playing time, and had a couple of good games later on in the season. But a lot of people expected him to come in and take the job from Chris Carson. That has not happened. But in any case, neither of them are in the top 20 of running backs in the NFL as far as running backs go. But what people may not know, and I'm just finding this out kind of as we go, but they got Dwayne Brown. They traded Houston Texans to get Dwayne Brown into short because they had an awful offensive line going back 2 years. Last year, much better. In this offseason, they pick up Mike Iupati. Now, Iupati, what is he now? He's been in the league quite a while at this point. Obviously, most of those years with the Steelers, and then with the Cardinals, and now with the Seahawks. So I don't know if he's the Mike Iupati that was in his prime, but he's an all-pro type of guard.
Oh, absolutely.
And
in his prime, he was the best guard in football.
Justin Britt, a very tenable center. Point being, this is a good offensive line. It's not the best in football by any stretch, but a solid offensive line. And a running game that Brian Schottenheimer, that's the thing that he kind of keys into. And he was kind of a head-scratching hire to a lot of people as an offensive coordinator. But this is a team that's expected to run the ball really well. Doug Baldwin retires. Tyler Lockett, people are talking about as being one of the top 3 slot receivers in football. I think that's crazy. I think Tyler Lockett's a really good wide receiver. I think, let's say this, he's a good wide receiver. He's a much better wide receiver than anybody had thought that he was going to be when he was drafted out of Kansas State to simply be a return specialist. But I don't know that I see it offensively the way a lot of people do. I think this is going to be a good but not prolific offense by any stretch. And I frankly think about the same defensively. I think this is a strong defense. I think it's a back two other than Wagner and maybe KJ Wright, pretty much a no-name defense. But you know what? Everybody on the defense was a no-namer before they became a namer, if I can say it like that. And I think that the way that Pete Carroll rocks and rolls on defense, I think that they kind of plug and play, and I think it works. And I think they're going to be good defensively. But I have them, clearly as a second best to the LA Rams. And frankly, what I'm seeing in Arizona is really getting my attention with Kyler Murray and perhaps the reemergence of David Johnson and getting a guy like Sizzle, like Hacksaw, to come in there and be a veteran presence defensively outstanding. So I kind of keeping it open, but I've heard multiple people talk about, contending to win the West. I don't see that happening.
Who are these people?
Like John Clayton. You're talking about
who thinks that Tyler Lockett's one of the best slots in the NFL? People that don't know all the guys that play slot? For people that don't know, Antonio Brown plays slot.
Let me put it like this. He was a top 5 producer in the slot as a slot receiver last year.
Okay. I would believe that because the best guys line up in the slot and not in the slot. Antonio Brown is just everywhere, right?
Larry Fitzgerald, he didn't have a great year last year, obviously. He's been playing
slot the last 2 years, for sure. Juju Smith-Schuster?
We'll see what he is.
Tyreek Hill?
He's slow, though.
Adam Thielen operates out of the slot a ton.
The other thing.
What about your boy, Jarvis Landry?
What's a slot?
Jarvis Landry is so good, and he's still probably not in the top 5 slots in the NFL if you consider Antonio Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster and Adam Thielen slots.
I just don't consider anything slots. I don't consider any one basically a slot receiver.
I don't know, dude. Jarvis Landry's a slot.
Julian Edelman.
Jarvis Landry is a slot receiver. He does not line up on the outside. Jarvis Landry, Julian Edelman are slot guys. Wes Welker was a slot guy.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp is a slot guy. Cooper Kupp. If we are really talking about the influence that you can have, not just get open on an option route and catch a ball. Wes Welker never ran the route that was called for him in his life. He just got open and caught the ball, and he had such good chemistry with Tom Brady that he was 120 catches a year because he did. Tom Brady knew, hey, stare him down, throw him the ball. Jarvis Landry is very much the same way. As far as a guy that influences the complexity of an offense and allows an offense to be as complex as it is, it's Cooper Kupp. The Rams' offense is actually not complex. Sean McVay's stuff isn't actually that out of this world. The number one, actually not the number one reason, the only reason that it is what it is when they are at their best in Los Angeles is because of Cooper Kupp.
Okay, here we go. Seattle Seahawks, rapid fire wins and losses. You ready? You're going to give them to me. I'm going to tell you who they're playing. Okay. You tell me if it's a win or a loss.
Okay.
Starting week 1. If I say versus home game for Seattle. Okay. Versus Cincinnati.
Win.
At Pittsburgh.
Win.
Versus New Orleans.
Loss.
At Arizona.
Loss. Yeah, loss.
Okay, I disagree on that.
I'm good with 2-2 at that point, though, because I'm not so sure about my at Pittsburgh either. I think 2-2 through that first 4 games.
Versus Los Angeles Rams.
Loss.
At home, loss.
Yes.
Okay. At Cleveland.
Loss.
So they're 2-4. Versus Baltimore.
That's a good game, too. They have a hard schedule. Win. Have they played a team that's not going to make the playoffs this year? Pittsburgh's the worst team on that schedule, and Pittsburgh's...
No, Cincinnati's the worst.
Yeah, Cincinnati's the worst.
At Atlanta.
Win.
Versus Tampa.
Win.
At San Francisco.
Loss.
At Philadelphia.
Loss.
Versus Minnesota.
Oh, man. That's a great game, too, in Seattle. Win.
Monday Nighter.
Win. Monday Night Football, they're winning.
At Carolina.
Man, they play every good team in the NFC.
That's a loss, I can tell you.
That's a loss.
They always. No. Versus Arizona.
Win.
At San Francisco.
Win. 9-7?
Looks like I missed one. 9-7 or 8-8. Can't.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think they are. I think they're 9-7 or 8-8. I think they're between 9-7 and 7-9.
Well, the difference between 9-7 and 7-9 can be the playoffs or not. So it is significant.
I don't think the Seattle Seahawks are a playoff team.
Okay. Quick break. Come back. Tommy Evans losing another argument. Day 2.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires, or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
We ate a lot of steaks before we came up with the Montana Club's Private Reserve Cut Angus. It's as good a steak as you're going to get. Our Private Reserve Cut Angus is specially cut for us. And with our custom seasoning, it has a flavor that's absolutely incomparable. We're confident that it will satisfy the most discriminating steak customer for an unrivaled steak experience. Real Montana, real food. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
When you need a bank to help ramp up your savings strategy, look to your local bank, Opportunity Bank of Montana. Build confidence in your financial future when you create a rainy day cushion or take care of the nest egg you already have. Opportunity Bank offers options from basic savings to money market accounts and certificates with competitive rates. There's nothing like the feeling of progress, so let's get started today. Come see us at Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com. Member FDIC.
If you are hurt or disabled, you may be entitled to benefits from an insurance company or Social Security. I'm Chris Helmer, an attorney at Clark Fork Law Offices. Our Missoula firm specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. There are many unknowns when injured or disabled. The other side is fighting hard. You should too. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, a little sports center for you. Montana State will have their 5th different starting quarterback since the You got to have the phone off. Okay.
Sorry about that. The phone's off.
Bad start for your segment, Tommy.
It was good. It was fine.
Jeff Choate's been coached 4 years. Now he's got his fifth starting quarterback. That's the point. His name, Casey Bauman. He's a redshirt freshman. He's played 6 snaps in his history as a Bobcat, and he will take over the reins heading into Texas Tech Week 1. Tucker Rovig had 2 starts last year, but was beat out by Bauman in this offseason.
Well, Osprey lost again in extra innings on Monday, falling 4-3 to the Ogden Raptors in 11. The loss means the O's are no longer in first place in the Pioneer League North after suffering their 3rd straight setback. The Raptors have 10 more wins than everybody else in the 8-team Pioneer League and are now 5-0 against Missoula.
Roots Sports has confirmed the kickoff times for all 10 of its Big Sky Conference football games of the week, including 6 kickoff times, which feature the University of Montana Grizzlies. There are 2 games that feature Montana State, including the last game of the year between the Cats and the Grizz. It will kick off at noon from Bozeman on November 23rd.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Who are the greatest frontmen in the history of music? 2 people will be offering you reasonable answers, and also Tommy's here. Good to be with you. Tutel Nuanez, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904.
You bring some notes?
West Broadway in Missoula, also Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at kurtzpolaris.com. Yesterday, we had a conversation which went poorly.
It did not go poorly.
Regarding who are the best frontmen in the history of music. Tommy, who is the esteemed producer of this show, engineer extraordinaire, and also a notable trail personality who you would have thought knew a little bit more about music than, in fact, clearly he does, offered to us Matt Schultz. Now, if you don't know who Matt Schultz is, don't worry. You are in the masses. In fact, Tommy himself did not know who Matt Schultz was, didn't know the name Matt Schultz, merely offered whoever the guy is for Cage the Elephant. It's all-timer, the best frontman in history. And so you had to come back here today and attempt to explain away how it is that could have been the first person that popped into your head.
It's not the first. It was after a lengthy amount of time and consideration that I resulted as my final answer being that guy, because it's still more entertaining. We didn't even know his name. Still more entertaining than Anthony Kiedis.
So this is the origination point of this argument was Tommy's unfounded hate for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, specifically because he thinks Anthony Kiedis can't sing.
Yeah, he's horrible.
My whole premise is that half the guys that are famous frontmen
100%
in rock history can't sing. What? I mean, Mick Jagger can't sing. Bob Dylan can't sing.
Yes, he can too.
But let's clarify here also. The question wasn't who's a better frontman than Anthony Kiedis in your opinion, Tommy, at which point you could have just said yourself, and no one can really argue with that. The question was, who are the best frontmen in history? And you said, Cage the Elephant.
Still better than Anthony, man. That's the point I'm trying to get across from the beginning of this was that he's still more entertaining than Anthony and better.
That is false, first of all, across the board, and also doesn't even answer the question.
All right, Ryan.
Yes.
Who are your favorites?
How about Maynard James Keenan for one?
Got to fill us in more.
Tool.
Perfect Circle. Okay, he's good.
One of the all-time visual artists on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you got?
Who else you got? You gotta give us a couple.
Are we going down the list, or are we just going?
I got a top 10 right here.
Okay. Oh.
We were doing 5.
Okay. Well, I got 10.
Okay, go.
Okay. I got as an honorable mention because he's only been in the E Street Band for part of his career and been a solo act for part of his career, even though the E Street Band's been his back band. I got Bruce Springsteen, even though I think he's one of the great musical artists of all time.
Tommy, you're never going to get a chance to give your 5.
I know how the show goes.
Yeah.
I got David Byrne. David Byrne from the Talking Heads.
He was my honorable mention, and that's why we came back with heads right there.
I got I got Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day. Love him. I think, and I'm talking Dookie Green Day, not American.
No. You're talking all of Green Day.
Okay, well, American Idiot is a brilliant album, even though I don't necessarily love it. Dookie is one of the great albums of my adolescence. It's
Dookie?
Have you never listened to this?
It's Dookie.
Dookie. Okay.
Dookie.
I don't know what I can say.
Listen to this.
Tommy is
man
right about this. Yes.
All right. Then I have Eddie Vedder. I got Brandon Boyd from Incubus. I have Scott Weiland from the Stone Temple Pilots.
Better.
Got Robert Plant at number 3 from Led Zeppelin. I got Dave Matthews, number 2. And I have Chris Cornell, number 1.
What makes Dave Matthews a great frontman?
I mean,
besides sitting on a stool and drinking wine and singing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, oh my gosh. You have to go see Dave Matthews in concert. He doesn't sit on a stool at all. Okay.
It is hard to be a great frontman, I will say, if you play an instrument. Because
but
you can't really wander around a whole lot.
Talk to Angus Young about that and get back to me.
My two main arguments for Dave Matthews are this. One, Dave Matthews has played in the Dave Matthews Band for the duration of his career. He has only cut one solo album, yet he is so transcendent that people refer to it as Dave. They don't think of it as the band, they think of it as him. My second argument for him would be that he is, as you said, it's hard to have the charisma and sex appeal that most of the traditional cliche top frontmen like Mick Jagger or Roger Daltrey or Jim Morrison were able to cultivate if you play an instrument. But Dave Matthews is almost as if he's a conductor because their band is so diverse and their live sets are so complicated that he's not only playing on a guitar and singing, he's also conducting a band. Okay. But for me, Chris Cornell has the best pipes of anybody in rock music history. I love him.
Tommy?
All right, so on that note, we'll start. These are in no particular order unless these are supposed to be ordered. We're not going to
No. Just nominees, candidates.
Only this guy is going to go with 5 runner-ups and then order them 5 through.
Hey, Gus, everybody likes lists besides you.
No.
Here's the deal. Okay, so off the idea that Dave is a conductor,
sure,
we're going to go immediately to Captain Beefheart because that guy is a conductor because he ran his band like Charles Manson ran his cult.
Oh my God.
So he locked his band in his house for 8 months.
Filled people in who he's a part of.
Captain Beefheart was this really, really out there sort of avant-garde experimental guy that gave Frank Zappa a
I was going to say this is. I knew Zappa's coming here.
So then, when Captain Beefheart fizzled out into oblivion with his cult, Zappa stepped in and took the reins. So he kept the band locked in his house for 8 months. This is rock history, and he fed each of the band members one measured out cup. Like a measurement of a cup of beans a day, and they had to learn the songs. That's a musical conductor, and that's a guy who's dedicated to his art and his craft. Not Dave Matthews.
Sounds
Talk
more
to
like
Captain
a
Beefheart.
criminal than an actual conductor. I can feed anybody a cup of beans and tell them to learn something. It doesn't make me any good at it.
Why does your mic sound so much more clear than mine, and especially Coulter's? What's up with that?
Let me just.
I think it's your headphones.
What if I bring yours all the way?
You're pathetic. You're pathetic.
Go ahead.
All right, so my top 5, and I do have a few runner-ups to debate about. So we got Captain Beefheart, okay? Obviously at the very tippy top. Paul McCartney is the number 1 if we're doing a rating thing.
Is Paul McCartney even the lead singer of the Beatles?
He beat out Matt Schultz?
Of all the things I'll actually agree with, I will say, as much as the Beatles suck, Paul McCartney is so much better than Gage the Elephant.
Okay, we're going Iggy Pop.
That's a good one.
Nick Cave.
I love Nick Cave.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, Nick Cave is on my list as well.
Yeah.
Have you seen Hell or High Water?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That soundtrack is great.
It's so good.
Yeah.
What I love about Nick is that when he's performing, he doesn't make eye contact with the crowd. He gets down and gets right up in your face and sits there and sings an entire song.
He's actually a psychopath. So Nick
That's
Cave,
the work of a great
for anybody that doesn't know who this is, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. They've released a handful of albums, but they've also done full-length soundtracks for many movies for a variety. I mean, their breakthrough was with Scream, right? Back in the late 90s when the first Scream movie came out, I believe, right?
I don't know.
And then they've also done the sound.
Nick Cave has been doing it for a long
Yeah,
time.
they're great.
He's good. He's a freak. He's awesome.
He is phenomenal.
Okay.
Ozzy Osbourne makes my top 5.
Okay, Ozzy's good.
I know.
James Hetfield is another guy we got to talk about.
Why?
Because Metallica is ferocious and James Hetfield is so sweet. Talk about a guy that doesn't have very much natural vocal talent who's been able to make an epic career out of it.
You
Talk
are
to Ryan Tutel.
Wrong about James Hetfield.
You think he's got epic vocal talent? I mean, he's got a great growl.
No, I think he's not even in remotely the conversation that we're having right here. Not even remotely.
See, okay, here's the thing that I could say about both of you guys. You guys are great learners if you choose to consume something. No. And almost always you come around to the other side. I think that Tommy would like almost every single thing that we tell him to like if he just listened to it.
Nope. I've learned how to prove you wrong at every statement you tout so confidently.
Don't argue about being right. Argue about the thing. Here's the issue. I've listened to plenty of Metallica. I like Metallica. I just don't like most of the members of Metallica, as it turns out. Chris Cornell, I don't like Chris Cornell, and I accept that that's on me. Like, I'm not
how?
saying
That's like your style. Like Soundgarden is like right up your alley.
It isn't though.
Why?
It just isn't because
is it too melancholy? It's not as not hype enough for you.
Just like
soft. That's exactly what it is. Soft. God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not.
Of all the things that it is, it's not soft.
Chris Cornell, it's slow though, and it's
That's
just,
because it's brooding.
No, it's brooding, and it does not capture me in any way.
Okay, so how much of your Chris Cornell non-affinity is connected to the fact that just Audio Slave in general? You love Rage Against the Machine.
Yes, I do, and Audio Slave, I like Audio Slave more than I like Soundgarden.
Okay,
but yes, it was still very, very when.
But you don't like Chris Cornell.
I mean, I don't know how many times I got to say it.
Man,
you know, no, I don't. I don't like Chris Cornell particularly. I respect Chris Cornell. I could say that.
Are you into Stone Temple Pilots?
It's okay.
Gosh, that's so weird.
No, Scott Weiland.
You're like the perfect age.
I mean, I'm the perfect age for a lot of things that I don't like.
Okay.
What's your top 5? Are yours ordered?
Maynard James Keenan.
Okay.
Tool.
Nick Cave, now that you said it.
Yeah.
Zach De La Rocha.
Rage Against the Machine.
Rage Against the Machine. Sonny, Whosoever. POD.
Okay.
Yep. Not notably Matt Schultz. Did not make my list. Ozzy didn't make my list. I'm okay with some. Beefeater here did not make my list. So those are mine.
Oh, man. Where are you at with the traditional guys, Gus?
What do you mean?
Like, you're not traditional, but like the low-hanging fruit of this category. The Mick Jaggers, the Roger Daltrys, the Jim Morrisons of the world.
By the way, I might add Kendrick Lamar if I need a fifth.
Don't think that fits the genre.
I'm actually going to try to swing a fist at you.
I mean, get in line.
If we're going to that category, Tyler, the Creator, whomps Kendrick all day long. You know that's true.
I don't know anything about that.
Here's the problem with this entire debate. You two have confused the entire list with your personal taste.
Sure. Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay. So then let's revert then to the greatest. My brother. I asked
Don't look at me like you're.
I mean, and of course it's personal taste. It's an opinion poll.
It's not an opinion poll. It's top rocket.
I asked my brother this before the show, and I thought he had a great response. He said, "You can debate who you like the most, but Robert Plant is the greatest frontman in music history because what would music be without Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin? The Beatles are transcendent, and Paul McCartney is absolutely a huge influence. And same with The Who and The Doors and all these bands, but none of them have as much influence on the current state of music. And I mean, Led Zeppelin resonates to this day.
For sure. No doubt.
By that line of reasoning, though, Elvis is on everybody's list.
Elvis is he's on my contenders. He was going to make my list.
Okay. I mean, here's the thing. Like, Bob Cousy was like legendary Hall of Fame great. He wouldn't be in the league today.
That's why Led Zeppelin's the greatest band of all time, because Led Zeppelin could drop their first album in 1969 when they did, or tomorrow, and it would be equally as popular.
I'm not arguing.
They're truly timeless. Even the Beatles.
So who do we
the
agree
Beatles
on?
are even a little bit dated. When you listen to the Beatles, you think, okay, that's great, but you know it's from the 60s.
Who do we agree on then? Nick Cave.
Yeah, Nick Cave, no doubt.
And Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And anybody else?
Nobody on your list.
I can't believe none of you guys went with the David Byrne. That's a good one, too.
He was almost there for me, but when I think about what makes a great frontman, it's more than just being behind the mic and singing the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And David Byrne sings the songs really well.
But he's
and
a
he plays
weirdo,
the
too. He
notes.
does the noodle.
He does a little noodle, but a lot of music, York does a great noodle too, but that doesn't make him an iconic frontman as far as I can tell.
Here's the
Iggy
thing.
Pop taking a freaking dump on the stage, like that's next level frontmanship right there.
No doubt.
Nick Cave spitting in your face while he's rattling off lyrics. It's being a different frontman.
Man,
pretty good.
This got real weird in the last 10 seconds. Nice work, Tommy, like usual.
I know.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River. In western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at SelwayArmory.com. The Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance is here. The world's best-selling off-road lineup is priced to move with financing as low as 3.99% and rebates up to $3,500. Live life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hardworking Ranger, or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. The best deals of the year are happening now. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $3,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Kurtz Polaris is now showcasing all of the new 2020 Polaris off-road vehicles. To be the first to get a great deal on brand new state-of-the-art Polaris vehicles at Kurtz Polaris. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. Rebates valid in U.S. through 9/30/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Financing offer valid on 2015s through 2020s. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride.
What do you get when you mix every NFL preseason game, cold beer, and the best wings in Missoula? The Desperado Sports Tavern. The Desperado is Missoula's premier Southside Sports Tavern. With 32 HD TVs, there's not a chance you'll miss a second of every NFL preseason game. It's time to start watching your favorite players and building your fantasy team at the Desperado. That's cold beer, NFL preseason, the best wings in Missoula, and you at the Desperado Sports Tavern, located on Russell, across from the Y.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
It's Tutel and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Welcome back. Tommy's still in studio with us. I don't know why. Oh, because I asked him. That's why. Oh, there you go.
We missed the song, man.
He's
Producer Reese.
Quickly gets kicked in.
All right.
We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios.
Bring it down.
Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at KurtzPolaris.com. If you missed anything in the show, you can check it out on the podcast 1029ESPN.com, or your favorite podcasting platforms. It is brought to us by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotels, the podcast. Coulter, I will say this. You've been bitter all week long. You're actually, not bitter today. I'm very happy about it.
It's because I went to Spin Cycle and got whooped this morning.
No, you got it all out of your system.
So there's a variety of teachers there, and I have only taken one class from Bonnie, my teacher, this morning.
Okay.
And the Spin Cycle, you bust out 3 really vigorous songs. It's all based on the beat. And then you do a lifting song, like where you're just sitting on your bike, slowly pedaling, but you're doing like a arms circuit. And I was humbled very quickly as somebody that's lifted weights my whole life that has never thought of grabbing anything less than the 25s off the rack and more like the 50s most of the time. You don't do that. Yeah, at first class, grab the 20s. Yeah, nope, dropping them. So, but anyways, I worked my way back down. I started with the 10s, up to the 12s, up to the 15s. So I've been doing 15s lately. That's pretty good. Get a good burn. But no one passed on the memo today that Bonnie likes to really blast the old shoulder. So I'm sitting there with the 15s. I'm just burning up. But regardless, Sweat Cycle down at the sweatshop, corner of Higgins and Broadway. It's a great place. Go check them out. I'd love to get a couple more guys in there because I'm telling you, these women will humble you. And there's only one other guy that takes any of these classes that I know of, at least. So come on down and join me sometime.
How many RPMs there when Matt Schultz is singing? Does it go through the roof or no? David Lee Roth was written in, right?
Yep.
One listener,
listener Scott reminded us that we missed David Lee Roth, which is a great point.
That's that's fair. I can appreciate that. It's a good thought.
Let me just interject this quick sentence for you,
please.
I saw Cage the Elephant and the Schultz guy do his Schultz thing, and I recognize your point with the Chili Peppers doing the tube sock performance situation. This guy omitted even the sock, streaking on the stage, hopping around like a Looney Tune up there to the songs.
You would actually think I don't like Cage the Elephant based on what I've said. I do like Cage the Elephant. There is no chance that this conversation is even possible to be had with them involved.
Your age is showing. You're like, this young kid's new music doesn't cut it for me.
No, well, that's fine. There's a lot of things that the young kids don't cut it. What are you all playing? Candy Crush? I'm out. Can't do that.
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I got so many apps on my new Xbox 360. I don't even know where to start.
Gosh.
I don't even know.
All right. Well, starting tomorrow, it's Tutel, Nuanez, and Evans. Tommy will be on the third seat for the rest of time.
Okay.
Tune into him on the trail tonight, the new show coming up right at you.
The hall in 4 minutes. I'll
you better go. Thanks for being here, Tommy. All of you. Also, thanks to you. See you tomorrow.
Alpine Touch has mastered keeping your taste buds happy by spicing up anything you throw on the grill this summer. Now, let Alpine Touch keep your mouth watering whenever you want their new sunflower